Welcome back, episode 8. It's time to add a background. Now, I finished off a really rudimentary prototype of my vertical level here. My player has to jump, 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 and get to the top here. This is where I'll have some type of completion. But what we're missing right now is a little bit of a background. So once you have your background art figured out, right now we just have a plain black background, which nothing wrong with that, but we can do better. And I'm going to teach you how to do this really simple script to allow your background to move to create a bit of a three-dimensional effect called parallaxing. And so let's dive into it. So first thing first, we're in our artwork folder here. Let's go and get our backgrounds. So I'm going to go and import a new asset here, and mine are not far away. They're just in a nearby art folder. And here's my three. Again, I exported these in different layers using pixelapp.com. And so we're going to bring these three in, and as usual, we're going to grab all three at the same time. They're going to keep sprite mode as single, but we are going to make these 32. I could, and this makes all of our pixels match again, so we don't have any large pixels versus small pixels. We're going to, again, make it point and make sure compression is set to none. We're going to apply that now, and there we go. Each of these ready to go. So I'm going to bring these into our scene. So I'm just going to drag and drop them. And what I like to do is, I don't want to do a new animation. It thinks I'm doing an animation because I grabbed that. So I'm going to drag and drop it into the scene here, okay? And I'm going to reset that transform so it's at 0, 0, 0. And we can see there that it is going on top of our tile map, which we don't want to have happen. And really what's happening there is based on the position, is based on these layers. So the layers can be a little bit confusing. So we do have these layers that we are utilizing for collision purposes. Okay, so we're going to leave that alone. But we also have something called sorting layers. And the sorting layers, we only have default so far. So we're going to add a layer here. We're actually going to add a few, but we're going to add some layers. So right now, I want to add a new layer, and we're going to call this one background 0, and I'm going to add another one. I'm just going to copy and paste that. We're going to call that background 1. I'm going to add another one. We're going to call that background 2. And so you get the idea, but we could easily add foregrounds and so on, but we do need to add one more layer here, and we're going to call this the player. And also you could have level, but this will work just fine, but I'm still going to create a layer called level. And so now when we go back into Unity here, we want to take my this actual level here, and I'm going to change the sorting layer to level. Okay, so now we can see it's going on top of our background if we look at our game scene here, which is what we wanted. Now this first background, I'm going to take the order, I'm going to put it on the background 0, and this is just telling Unity the order in which to draw things. Okay, so what can go on top of each, so it should make sense here. So let's bring in my other backgrounds here, and I'm going to set them all at 0, 0, 0. So I'm going to bring this one into I can bring it just right into the hierarchy too, works fine. And then this transform is 0, 0, but I need to change that to background 1. So then it's on top of there. Okay, and then let's take our last one here, drag that in, and we're going to make that background 2. And I notice we can't see our player anymore, and that's because I didn't change the order of that layer. Let's switch that to player, and there is my bot. Okay, so now these are all at 0, 0, 0. They're all on top of each other. And just for organization, what I'd like to do, first let's rename these is 1, or sorry, let's keep consistent here with our indices. Let's go 0, 1, and 2. And I'm going to create a new empty game object. I'm just going to call it backgrounds, because we're going to be parallaxing these. I'm going to reset that transform, is always a good habit, and I'm going to take those and pop them on top of there. There we go. Now everything should work just fine, and if I hit play right now, we'll have a background. But you're going to notice something camera-wise that doesn't make it very exciting. So if I'm just going up, it moves the same as the rest of my level, and eventually there's no more background, which makes no sense at all, and it's a little bit weird. Okay, so we need to parallax this background. All right, so how do I do that? So right now, I notice a couple things we need to fix before we parallax. And so what I'm noticing is if I press play and I go all the way to the left, I can see the edge of that background. If I go all the way to the right, I can see the edge of that background. So that's the other thing we need to also keep in mind. But let's get this thing parallaxing and let's see how it looks. So how do we do that? What are we going to do? We're going to go into our assets, into our scripts folders, and we're going to make a brand new script. Create new C# script, and we're going to call this the background controller. Okay, and this is a script that we're going to put on all three of our backgrounds. So let's open up this in Visual Studio, and it's only going to take about 8 or 9 lines of code. Okay, so in our background controller, we got to just declare a few basic variables. Private first is a float that we're going to create called the start position. We're going to make 2 of these, start position X and start position Y. Now, I could write this again and it's autofilling for me, which is great. Another way to code this is I could simply go comma and then type start position Y, and that would let me declare them both in the same line. It's totally up to you in how you prefer to code that in. So I got my 2 positions of my X and my Y. Those are going to be where it's tracking the background where it starts. And then in public, I'm going to need to be referring to the camera. So we're going to just have public game object. We're going to call that game object. We're going to call that cam. And then we're also going to have a public float. And this is how we're going to control how fast the backgrounds move. We're going to call this exactly what it is. It's the parallax effect. Okay. And that's going to control the speed. In the start, we only need to do one thing. Excuse me, one thing. And we need to get the start position of the X and set that equal to the transform of the background dot position dot X, and we'll do the same thing for Y. There we go. Okay, now we've started with those, and what are we going to do with them? Well, we're going to go into the update, but we actually want to change this to the fixed update. Make sure you do that, or else things are going to be really jittery, because this is going to be based off of our camera, which follows our player, and our player is moving via the fixed update left and right. So we're going to use that for this. Now, in our fixed update, we first need to calculate the distance the background moved based on the camera. Sounds fancy, but it isn't. We're just going to create a temporary distance float. Okay, and we're gonna have 2 of these, so we're gonna call it distance X, and we're gonna have a distance Y. Now, distance X, we're gonna take the cam dot transform dot position dot X, and I'm going to multiply it by the parallax. So this is what's going to move it. So we're going to multiply it by the parallax effect. Okay. Now, when I do this, if I multiply it by 0, it'll move with the camera. If I multiply it by 1, it won't move at all. So just to have and we're going to see how this works in a second. So I'm going to do the exact same thing. Let's copy that line, and we're going to just change these to Y. So distance Y and position Y. And we're going to be using the same, our parallax effect on both. And then last, let's actually change the position of the background based off of this distance. So we're going to take transform.position, and we're going to change that position to a new vector 3. And we're going to take the start position, which we had stored, but start position, whoops, that autofill didn't work. Start position X, and we're going to add on the distance X. Okay, and we're going to do the exact same thing with the Y. And then the Z, we're just going to capture what it currently is and not change it at all, because we have to put in 3 values. Okay, for a vector 3. Now, what I've written here, it's ready to work, but we now need to put it on our background. So let's head back into Unity here, let the scripts update, and we're going to pop onto our backgrounds here, and we're going to do all three at the same time. So working smarter, not harder. So I'm going to grab all three of these backgrounds, holding shift. So I'm going to grab all three, and I'm going to drag onto them my background script. Okay, and we want them all to refer to the main camera, not the virtual camera, meaning the reason we do that is because the main camera is moving via the virtual, so this won't work if we put it on the virtual camera. Okay, now time to set our parallax effects. Right now they're all set to 0. By default, none of them are going to move. Or not, they're all going to be moving more than we want them to. So the very background, I like to set that to 1. Okay, that's the stars. So it's going to appear, it's going to move with our player as we move up the level. So you could put a very small effect on that, but really when we're moving in the real world, you can't really see the stars moving. They're so far away. The mountains here, I'm going to start this off at 0. So we want a number between 0 and 1. This is going to be 0. Let's try 7. And we're going to tweak this, and the closer one we want to go a little bit less, so let's go 0.5. Okay, now what we just created is this parallax effect. We're going to see it in action. It's going to completely change the feel of the game. It's going to create a bit of a 3D element here. So let's see how this works. So we can see as we move left and right. Okay, I need to expand that. We can see I'm getting just to the edge, but we can see how the mountains are moving. So let's move up here. Okay, and we can see the mountains and the angles. Everything has a 3D dimensional effect, and you're going to see as I get to the top here. Oh, did I make my level impossible? I don't think so. I remember I made this jump harder. There we go. And we get up to the top here, and we're getting to the peaks of our mountain. Oh no, that's terrible. And you get the idea. Okay, so nothing wrong with everything going up and down. I can see everything great. It's not getting any glitch, but when I go off to the side, definitely I don't want those hard edges. That looks terrible, and that's super easy to fix. So I'm happy with those settings. Feel free to play around with your parallax effect. And of course, if you have more layers of your background, then please start changing more of those numbers and you get more and more of a 3D effect. If you have any foreground items in your map, okay, like you could have stuff that's in front of our player, like some bigger trees or something, depending on your map, make sure you use a negative value on the parallax effect. So I'm just going to turn off our grid here because I need to be able to see just the background. And this is super easy. All I'm going to do is press Control D. I'm going to duplicate this background, okay? And then I'm just going to move it to the left, okay? And let's zoom in to make sure I'm getting that just right. Yep, it looks pretty seamless there. And I'm going to do it again. And I'm going to move that to the other side. So let's just move over here. Duplicated it, and this is why I made sure everything would line up nicely so it all works out. And these all have the same script, so they're going to move at the same time since we duplicated it. Everything should work just fine. So I'm going to close all those backgrounds and let's test it one more time. Obviously, let's turn this back on so I actually have something to jump on. And we're just going to quickly test it left and right to make sure that everything looks good. So I go way over here. Yep. I can see the mountains continue. I can see the mountains. Oh, we do have a seam there, so I just need to tweak that just a little bit. I'm not sure if you're picking that up on your camera on the YouTube, but it's definitely an issue. So we're just going to quickly fix that and zoom in on that background there, and I'm just going to move it just slightly. Where is it? Here it is. Just move it over just a hair, and that should fix our problem. Test it again, jump over here. Yep, no more line. Perfect. Okay, and that's parallax. So what we just created is a very common set of code for the parallax effect. You'd only need the X if this was a horizontal level, but I find I really like parallaxing the Y as well, as because we're going up and it creates that effect with the mountains. Maybe a bit too strong based on how far away they are, not as realistic, but hopefully you get the idea. All right, we'll see you in the next one. Bye.